here in the Assembly. We've had the Finance Minister talking about the impact of the credit crunch, really, and how that will impact on how this executive delivers its programme for government.
Yes, he kind of gave a strategic overview of the finances in the course of the last year and looking towards this year coming up. There was nothing really very specific in terms of saying, look, we're going to lose this initiative or that initiative, but it was very much a warning shot, I think, across the bow of all the MLAs there, because he essentially said that if you take into account the economic downturn, the savings that Whitehall's looking to make, the fact that they've deferred water charges here and aren't getting the income there, the fact that property prices have slumped and that's hit the executive in terms of, say, the sale of housing executive homes, we've heard about that, the sale that they were hoping to make of the Cross-and-Creevy Agricultural Research Station, and they've had a much lesser potential income from that now than they would have had. He said within the context of all of that, he would expect in the next 2 years to have the resources available to the executive to decrease rather than to increase. And he was basically saying, if there's an MLA out there who wants to lobby for more money for this service, more money for that service, he wants to hear from them, what service are you going to cut? Because there's a piece of cake here which is not getting any bigger. In fact, it's diminishing. OK, well, we'll digest a bit more of this now with something from the Chamber earlier. The Finance Minister himself, as Mark has just been going through there, has told the Assembly that over the next 2 years the level of resources available to the Executive will reduce rather than increase. Mr Dodds blamed the economic downturn, the deferral of water charges and the loss of expected income on property sales. He said that MLAs might have to make some tough choices.
The current financial situation means that there will be further constraints on the level of access to our outstanding stock of end-year flexibility, whilst in terms of the disposal of surplus assets, the main emphasis for Northern Ireland departments will be on ensuring delivery of existing plans rather than seeking additional income, a point that was recognised by the DFP Committee. Therefore, in overall terms, the level of resources available to the Executive over the next 2 years is expected to reduce rather than increase. And in this context, my ministerial colleagues and I will need to focus our efforts on making the best uses of the resources that we have available. In this context, the main source of funding to address emerging pressures is expected to come from the resources which were allocated in the budget process, but which are no longer required for the purpose and over the time frame initially intended.
The Alliance accused the Minister of presiding over a £450 million funding gap. The SDLP wanted more detail and called for Nigel Dodds to reassess the priorities set out in the programme for government. Speaking in the Chamber this morning, the Ulster Unionist's Basil McRae wasn't very happy either.
The Minister's statement lacks a certain clarity. I'm not sure if he's telling us that there is a problem or there isn't a problem. It appears to me that we will not be able to balance our books, that we have made commitments that we will not be able to honour. There is a £700 million shortfall.
Order. Questions, Mr McRae, questions.
Can the Minister confirm that the pressures from the current and capital expenditure over the next 2 years are £700 million? And that there is only potential easements of £60 million. Can he tell us, when he says that he is going to think about giving consideration to the most appropriate decision about talking about this, what his thinking is on that? And will he tell us how he intends to bring his executive colleagues together? Because this myth that they are all working together is simply just a myth. This is a serious issue, and I have great confidence in the Minister, but I would like to actually hear how he intends to bring the whole Assembly together to deal with this very difficult issue.
Minister?
Well, I'm grateful to the member for his confidence in me. I appreciate that very much. I hear what he says about making commitments we can't honour and about balancing the books, and it's a very, very important point that he makes in that regard, and I'm sure that he says that with all sincerity. Mr Deputy Speaker, in terms of the pressures that departments have identified, look, what we're doing is setting out a strategic stock take over the next 2 years. It is no great surprise to me, or it shouldn't come as any great surprise to any member of this House, that when departments are asked to put on the table what pressures they see emerging, that as part of a budgetary process they will put a considerable amount on the table. As I've already indicated, not all of these are inescapable. Not all of these will be to the scale or to the time frame when we get down to it that will require that every single penny piece of this is met. And of course, the reduced requirements at this stage, looking ahead 2 years, is not going to be at the level that it will ultimately turn out to. And can I assure the honourable member that in relative terms, as I said in my statement, that the pressures identified by departments, and I think this needs to be borne in mind, is equivalent to about 2.7 to 3.4% of departmental budgets and settlements over the 3-year budget period, and that 4.8% of resources were declared by departments as surplus in 1 year, 2007-8. So I think that indicates where we're at with this. I am coming to the Assembly pointing out what are the range of issues, what's the overview. It's important that the committees and the Assembly and members are aware of all of these issues, but we have to manage them, looking ahead again at the possibility of greater efficiencies coming out of Whitehall and the impact that would have. But by the Executive and the Assembly taking note of all of these issues, then we're better able to manage those issues moving forward.